Hi guys, this video is going to introduce a new type of grammar which is similar to the regular grammar that we've already talked a lot about, but slightly more powerful. So what I want you to remember from before is what the regular languages are, what the regular grammars are, particularly the formal definition, and the concept of expressive power. So what I mean by that is when we say that the regular grammars are capable of expressing or generating all of the regular languages, then we're talking about the expressive power of the model of regular grammars. And the same for finite state machines, etc. So just keep that concept in mind. The definition of a context-free grammar is almost identical to the definition of a regular grammar that we had before. So it is still a four-tuple, exactly as we had before, and it still consists of the same four elements. So the first element is a set, which contains all of the non-terminals, and it's called the non-terminal alphabet. The second element is the regular old alphabet, or in this case, when we're talking about grammars, we say the terminal alphabet. R is the set of production rules, which still have rules in the form where we have something on the left being expanded out into something on the right. And we still have one single start non-terminal, which must be part of our non-terminal alphabet, or sorry, an element of our non-terminal alphabet. The key difference between a context-free grammar and a regular grammar is in the rules. So let's go back and talk about regular grammars again. The rules said that we could have a left-hand side which could only be one element from V, the non-terminals, and that the right-hand side could be one of two forms. It could be either one terminal, including epsilon, or one terminal followed by one non-terminal. So here we have on the left in green all a set of rules that are considered valid rules for a regular grammar. So the first two are simple because they've got one non-terminal on the left and one terminal on the right. The third one here has one non-terminal on the left and epsilon on the right, so it's expanding that into nothing. And the final one is the most complex rule that we can have in a regular grammar, which is one non-terminal expanding into a terminal, A, followed by a non-terminal, in this case S. All of these things here on the right are invalid rules, so we can't have these in a regular grammar. So things such as anything with a single non-terminal on the right, single non-terminals followed by a terminal, multiples of non-terminals, or any sort of complex combination of terminals and non-terminals that doesn't fit one of these two rules here. Other things that we can't have include anything where the left-hand side is anything other than a one non-terminal. So that could be epsilon on the left is not allowed, or any terminals on the left are not allowed, or any multiples of non-terminals on the left are not allowed. What the context-free grammars do is relax some of the restrictions on what we can have in our rules. So the context-free grammars still have the exact same restriction on the left-hand side. It can still only be one non-terminal, but the right-hand side can be pretty much anything. So anything which can be made from elements in the non-terminal set or the terminal set. So basically any string that you can make up by making an alphabet that is the union of the two of them and cleaning it. So all of the strings that we had, all of the rules that we had before that were valid rules for a regular grammar are also valid rules for a context-free grammar. But also this set in the middle here, which were invalid rules for a regular grammar, now become valid rules for a context-free grammar. So I'd like you to pause just for a second here and make sure in your own head that you're happy with the fact that all of those are valid rules according to these definitions of what can be on the left and right hand sides. However, some of the rules that were not valid for regular grammars are also still not valid for context-free grammars. And again, I'd like you to pause here for a second, and I'll stop, so that you can be happy with the fact that everything that I've listed in green there are valid rules, and everything that's in red are invalid rules for the context-free grammars. So I've given you a definition for what a context-free grammar is, but you can be forgiven for being confused as to what the term context-free even means. What context-free means is that when we expand the rules from taking something on the left-hand side and replacing it with something on the right-hand side, the surroundings of the thing that we're replacing don't matter. So, let's take a concrete example. Let's say we have this grammar here on the left, where we have non-terminals S, T, and U in capitals, and terminals A, B, C. And we have these set of rules here. And let's say that we've expanded using the only rule that we can expand from the start non-terminal S, so that we now have a non-terminal, then an A, and then another non-terminal. You'll notice that there are two options for what we can pick for T, and two options for what we can pick to replace U with. When we decide what we can pick to replace T with, the fact that there is nothing to the left of T or an A to the right of T doesn't restrict us at all. We are able to replace T with any rule. So we could replace it with the U, or we could instead expand it into a B and then another T. The same goes for the U. The fact that there's an A before it and nothing after it do not restrict us in how we can expand the rules. Now that's important because there are some grammars that we will come across later in the course where the context of the thing to be expanded actually matters. But for the context-free grammars, the context of the non-terminal does not affect what rules we can apply. And that's what we mean when we say the term context-free. So I hope that explains that a little bit. So the final concept in this video is the expressive power of a context-free grammar. So we know that the regular grammars are powerful enough to express the regular languages. We've already talked about that before. But we can see that any regular grammar also fits the rules of a context-free grammar. So it's actually a context-free grammar. So we can see straight away that the context-free grammars are trivially at least as powerful as the regular languages. The question is, are they more powerful? So before, when we had the deterministic finite state machines and the non-deterministic finite state machines, we knew the non-deterministic variants were at least as powerful as the DFSMs, because every DFSM was trivially an NDFSM. But what we found out was that adding that extra, removing some of those restrictions by giving us extra options in the non-deterministic finite state machines didn't give us any power to accept any new languages that we couldn't already accept with the DFSMs. The question, however, is that the case for the context-free grammars, or do they let us generate languages that we could not generate with the regular languages? The answer, which we'll prove later, is yes. And it seems pretty obvious, because why would we have restricted ourselves to the regular grammars anyway if the context-free grammars were exactly the same? Why would we bother setting these arbitrary limits on what can appear on the right-hand side if that didn't actually change the set of languages that we can get? But it is important with these sorts of things to always formally prove what you're saying instead of just saying something wishy-washy like I just did. So, what you should know from this video is what a context-free grammar is and the ways in which they differ from a regular grammar. And what I'd like you to do before you watch the next video, and definitely before you hit the lectures, is to think about whether you could express any language which you know is not regular from before by proving it with using the pumping lemma, to see if you can take any language like that and generate it using a context-free grammar. And if you can, you've already proven what we're about to prove in the next video. But it would be good for you to at least start thinking about that before you let me spoon feed you the answer later.